Hi guys, welcome to another episode of SUSU Cool Down with me, Demi Samande. Today I am joined by my friend. Folake, can you say hi to the people?
Hi people.
How are you? How are you? How are you? You're not a stranger to the house of SUSU.
No.
You've been here before, so get comfortable.
Okay.
We're not. What episode did we cover the last time that you were here?
I think it was about striking a balance between work. Like, what do you do outside of work to keep you sane? I think
it was mental health focused, right? What about mental health? That was literally
like over 2 years ago.
Over 2 years ago. Welcome back.
Thank you.
What's going on? Why are the hiatus?
Yeah, tell me. Why haven't I been invited? Excuse me.
I'm not lie to you. We have not been back at SUSU Cool Down for a while. It has been a year and a half. But you know what? All the conversations that I'm always having about business, I always try to strike a little bit of a balance. So here we are back at it again to talk all things other than work, right?
Thank God.
So so tell me, how are you? Like, how are you really doing? What's the last 2 years been like for you? In fact, let's not even go as back as 2 years. What's the last few months been like for you? What's going on?
It's a really interesting time. I have a lot of moving parts, and I think, there's a lot of uncertainty with me as well, as you know, and obviously as we've spoken about, some things have changed work-wise, and I find myself trying to find my feet again. And it's also always not difficult, but always kind of an interesting journey, finding yourself situated again after an unexpected sort of upheaval with work or whatever. So I'm kind of, in that weird place where I don't feel settled yet. And, it makes it obvious that maybe I do place a lot of my identity into what I do, even though it is a part of my identity. But I feel unsettled work-wise, and somehow it finds its way to creep into other things. So I would say, how am I feeling? I'm feeling unsettled. I am feeling a lot of moving parts, but I'm also feeling hopeful, optimistic, and just trusting that things will fall in place. Do what I can do to make sure that things do fall in place, within my power, And,
all right, so tell everybody what it is that you've been doing, like, for work that is now sort of shifting and going in unknown territories. Let everybody understand a little bit.
Okay, without saying too much, I am a consultant, right? So I don't work in just one place. I consult for a bunch of companies. But I spent a lot of my time consulting for this company. Don't need to mention names. And a lot of things happened internally, such that the company no longer functions in the way that I know it. And they were taking up a lot of my time. So even though I was a consultant, I did get quite comfortable, spending a lot of my time doing work for that company. And I always say it's the best job I've ever had. Even though I wasn't an employee, it's the best job I've ever had. But, life happens. And like I said, the company is no longer functioning as I know it. So, I was kind of thrown into the open. Like, it crept up on me. I didn't realize that this was happening. It kind of happened slowly. But then, I found myself now wondering, oh my God, like I then realized how much of my time I'd been given to this company. So I then almost started to panic. Like, what am I going to do now? Because a few years ago, I quit my job at one of the big 4 accounting firms. And, I found I had a few months of just like not really knowing what I wanted to do, but things fell in place, and in my mind, I thought I had escaped that stage in life where it's just like, oh, you don't really know what things are like. And then I find myself back there and I'm just like, how the hell did I end up here?
Life happens,
right? Exactly. And life happened to me, So I'm just, so I've, put myself out there and joined a couple of projects, some of which are still in the works. So obviously I don't want to go into detail, and I've now found myself in a different position where I'm building something from scratch. And
what does that feel like? Is it unnerving? Is it as unnerving as people might think it would be?
No, so for me, I didn't think, so for me, it wasn't even unnerving. In terms of, because it wasn't my project. I didn't start it from scratch. It was someone else's idea, but they brought me in to build. And for me, it's like, yeah, everything that they were saying was right up my alley. It wasn't necessarily something I would dream about doing, but it was like, yeah, I can do that in the meantime, sort of thing. However, what I've then realized is how much you depend on other people to make things work. And that has kind of thrown me off a little bit, because as a and maybe that's why I structured my life such that I'm a consultant, where it's just like, listen, I can get up and go, I do what I need to do. But when it gets to a point where you have to start depending on other people, and then you can't move at a pace as fast as you would want to, or whatever, that kind of throws me off.
Yeah, but what's your support system like right now? How do you feel you've got your bearings in terms of the support system? Because that's important, right?
Yeah.
So when life happens and things kind of turn upside down, the things we're expecting, I can go into a little bit about that. Things we were expecting this year, they didn't quite fall into place, but. Yeah. When life happens, what's your support system structure like at the moment?
So I do have some quality people who literally I call and I send an SOS, like, guys, and they literally come to my rescue. But I find that outside of the support system that I get from like friends and family, I do need to go inside of myself as well, right? And I feel like that's the most important support system. How are you rooting for yourself when things don't go well? How are you sort of, how do you keep yourself safe? I have to go inside of myself sometimes. And, it's not an easy thing to do, because sometimes I want to just escape. And, but I think having a few minutes of meditation in the morning where I'm just like, okay, what's going on? Where are we right now? What are we doing? What should our mindset be? How should we navigate this? How can we, what are we doing wrong? What part have we had to play in things not going right?
Would you call that self-soothing?
Maybe
a bit of self-soothing, a moment to just quieten and try to, I don't know, find your inner voice for navigation. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah, and just not to get swept up with everything that's happening, because life will take, like you said, life happens and life will take you along with it as it's happening. But it's so important to come back to who you are and, let's find our purpose. Why are we here? What do we really want? Why did we choose?
Let's unpack that a little bit. Like, so purpose is such a big word, right? Everybody talks about it all the time. What is your purpose? What is your purpose? From the top gurus of the world to, the most, renowned motivational speakers. And when you're looking for wisdom, as I like to call it, right? You go searching for these things. You hear, purpose, your wisdom lies in your purpose, and your purpose lies in your wisdom, and so forth and so forth. That messaging, like you said, sometimes it's kind of like, is that really what I need right now? Or is it, I need to find a way to kind of go within, right? But then in going within, like, how do you begin to even unpack that mess? Not to say you figured it out, but what is the motive of, what is your mode of finding solutions? Like what goes on with you when you're going through that process of trying to unpack even the madness that lives within?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's being able to find the disconnect with who you project yourself to be, who people think you are, because sometimes there's a pressure that comes from the impression that people have of you, right? So it's not necessarily false, this impression that they have of you, but that's just maybe the energy that you give off or the impression that you give off. So people see you and they think, oh wow, you're like really put together, you know what you want, you're a go-getter, you're this, you're that. But then sometimes within yourself, you don't necessarily feel that you're those things that people are describing, but then you always feel the pressure to live up to what people are saying that you are, what people say, especially when those things are positive, right? But I think how I do it is really tell myself the truth, right? And yes, as much as it's good to get encouragement from outside and encouragement from other people, the truth is at the end of the day, what people think about you is none of your business. What do you think about yourself? Who are you? Like what, you and maybe the impression that people have of you is who you want to be, but maybe you're not there yet inside, right? So I think it's naming things, like recognizing like, okay, people think I'm this, but if I'm being very, very honest, this is where I'm at. Am I happy being that? Or do I have more to aspire to? Like, it's really just being brutally honest with yourself and seeing where you can, and obviously it's good to be hard on yourself because it pushes you, you know what I mean? But also just sometimes take it easy on yourself.
Oh, do you know, that thing is so tough, you know. I think I'm probably I'm not probably, I know for a fact, I am my own biggest critic, right? To the point where sometimes it can, I don't know, I want to be as kind as possible. And I do find moments of kindness, don't get me wrong. But there's also moments where it's like, there's the reason for me personally why what people think of me, I don't even tune into it, because I'm already at that, I'm already there at that threshold. I'm at the front of that line, right?
Yeah.
So if anybody else has an opinion, like get in line, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm the first person who's going to critique everything that I'm doing. I'm really the first person who's going to be hard on myself, and I don't really see many people who are harder on myself than I am. Which I don't know if that's always the most healthiest. I think it's healthy. As far as it can get you to achieving a particular goal. But this conversation is not really about work, right? It's about life. In those moments when life happens, where are we? What are we doing? How we sort of doing conflict resolution even within ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really the biggest battle, right?
Yeah.
So those moments when I'm being super, super hard on myself, I have to be intentional about finding moments of kindness, right? So when we hear these people talking about, you know, you got to do this, you got to do that, it's kind of like, do I really? do I really? Because it's almost like what medicine is required for the patient right now with the symptoms on which the patient is.
Symptoms that might not even be seen by, an external party.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So even though that people are talking and saying, having their opinions and stuff, it's like, I'm not, where you think I am is actually not where I am at all, right? So that doesn't really, the expectations are there, I understand, but that's not where I'm standing right now. What do I need right now? And understanding, that is this the right moment to be hard on myself? Because there are moments where you have to be incredibly hard on yourself.
No,
right?
it's important.
But then there are also moments where you have to be incredibly kind. How do you sort of differentiate between the two? Like how you navigate it to recognize what does Folake need right now, as opposed to how do I fix this problem? What do I actually need right now?
Yeah, I think it's paying attention to how you're really feeling. I think as women sometimes, as I've heard from a lot of, my friends as well, we know how we're feeling inside, but we try to deny it with our actions, or we don't admit to ourselves how we're really feeling. There are times...
Are sipping this, or why are we not sipping this wine?
Oh my God, our wine. Cheers, by the way.
Cheers, dear. This is that French thing. Folake speaks French, by the way. She's kind of bougie like that. She's kind of fancy, you see. We're going to tell a little bit about your obsession with wine and French and wine class and all the extras, all the wonderful things that you do. But yeah, please go back to your point.
Yeah, I think it's paying attention to how you really feel. I think the more you ignore how you're truly feeling, the worse it is for you. There are times when you feel like being hard on yourself. It feels good, actually, sometimes that you're pushing yourself.
Does it feel good?
Sometimes.
Okay.
And then there's sometimes where it's just like, what the hell? Like, you know you should be doing something. You know you should be at a particular place with work, with whatever it is, but you just don't feel... Okay, so I'm going to compare it to... And by no means am I saying that, this is how things should be. Sometimes you go to the gym and you feel really good. Oh my God, I felt really good after this session. I feel really good that I pushed myself in this way, right? And then sometimes you go in the gym, even though it was a good session, you just feel like, why did I do this? I clearly, my body was clearly telling me something else, but I ignored it because I felt like this is what I have to do at this point because, I have to train, I have to be fit or whatever. You know what I mean? But it's paying attention to how you really feel. Sometimes you don't feel like going to the gym, but you feel like I can go to the gym today, and you go and it pays off. But sometimes your body is telling you like, actually, I don't think today is a gym day. But because there's so much pressure that you put on yourself about maybe your fitness or your fitness goals, whatever it is, you just ignore that feeling and you go ahead and you're paying for it daily. So I think it's listening, truly listening to, because your mind and your body, they have all the answers, right? And yes, sometimes mind over matter, and sometimes you do have to push. But I feel like deep down inside, there's just a tiny voice that is sort of your compass, right? That navigates, whatever. You need to actually get into, and it's so hard. Like it's something that I'm struggling with on a daily. Like I'm struggling with listening to that voice and struggling with trusting it. You know,
that's the key word, I think, because I think we all have the voice. When someone says to you, "Oh yeah, we all have it in a voice," yes, we all have it, but it's trusting it. That ability to just be like, this is exactly what it's telling me right now, and it's not contrary to what I expecting of myself, but understanding that this is the voice is speaking to me. And then but I get those moments and I'm just like, is it the voice or is it the enemy?
There's several voices. Let's be honest.
several voices. I'm not asking myself like, I probably shouldn't acknowledge this, that I'm having all these crazy voices speaking to me simultaneously, right? There's a voice that will say to you, you know, this is how you're feeling. Then there's a voice saying to you, that's a lie. You're not really feeling that. You probably picked up somebody else's emotion along the way, because I'm very, very much like that, like an empath, right? So I can sense the emotion, the energy. And sometimes I question whether it's actually mine, or if I've just, you know, I've just collected it from somewhere, and I question that. So what I've started doing is I've been having those demi versus the observer moments. Yes, right. Yes, so I'll have a moment, and something in my spirit says this is not good, or something says this is not necessarily good or bad, but question it. So the observer will now stand back and look in, and the observer will be almost the judge and jury and say, okay, that's okay. Or moments where it would say, that's not you. Right. So you know, sometimes you get these like really, really dark thoughts, right? The observer in my dark moment, those dark moments, they're very, very addictive, because they make you feel a degree of comfort. Let me not even.
Yes, comfort.
It's weird. It's like a dark comfort. You feel very comfortable. There's something very, very warm about it, right? There's something that comfort. It hurts. It's painful, but it's also.
You want to stay there. It's like you want to nest there.
You want to nest there, because somehow, I don't know if it's. I don't know what the word is I can use to articulate it, but comfort is the only thing that comes to mind. But it goes a little bit deeper than comfort. It's almost like an obsession with self-destruction
or something
along those lines, right? So that's the moments when the observer will come and be like, be careful. Is that really you? Or is that something or somebody else? Right? So I've gotten to the point in my journey now where I've been able to observe myself more. So my thoughts are not me.
You're not
right?
your thoughts.
They're
absolutely.
My
100%.
thoughts are not me,
it's
right? They don't define me, right? So I could be having a negative day. I could be having a negative thought. And really the observer will just say, do you know what? You want to nest? Nest for a couple of hours. But get up.
Keep it moving.
And keep it moving. Until that feeling is no longer there, right? And there are moments where, you know, the observer's voice is completely silent. It doesn't even, I can barely hear it, because it's losing that day. And then there are days where it's amplified, right? By the grace of God, right? It's amplified and you feel like, oh, I hear you. I'm on it. Right. And I can in those moments I can give myself grace. And I can understand that I am not my thoughts and so forth. And I have to keep reminding myself that I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my thoughts. So the thoughts will come, and then you find a way to kind of just let them just disperse in their own time. And sometimes it lingers longer than it should. Those are the scary moments.
No, but I think it's important what you said, where it's that when you acknowledge the thoughts and you give yourself permission to let it linger for a couple of hours, and you're not. I mean, the thoughts are there, right? You, like you said, you're not your thoughts; they're just there. Okay, allow them to sit, but don't let them like make
Fester,
a home. Fester. Oh yeah, that's it. That's the word. And I think just giving yourself that permission alone makes all the difference, right? But when you're trying to fight it constantly, you find yourself sinking deeper.
Oh, I've been there, by the way. I've been that person who's been fighting it by way of denial or even by way of defiance, because it's kind of like, it doesn't exist. No,
like, stop it.
And it's like, no, relax.
It does exist.
It is really there, even if it's the tiniest little dust of it, it's still there. But fighting it is almost like, how do you, if I tell you not to think about a lion right behind you now, Are you going to stop thinking about a
No,
lion?
I'm not.
Don't think about a
Yeah.
lion, Folake Alli. Stop it. Stop it now.
All I can think of is
Stop
the lion
it.
from the Wizard of Oz.
No, a scary lion. I'm just stop it. That's what your mind is really doing. It's trying to be stern with you. It's like, stop it. Don't do that. And it's like, oh no, there's a lion.
Okay.
Oh,
What
okay.
else is there?
What else? All right, we're gonna just chill with the lion today.
Yeah.
We're just gonna hang out with the lion, right?
Yeah.
Just chill, relax. It's all good. And then somehow you just figure out that, oh, okay, you've kind of moved away from that thought now. Another thought has taken its place, and so forth and so forth.
Yeah.
But as we're sort of, this is we're now in December. What is today's date? The
I think
third?
it's the third. Yeah.
The 3rd of December? I'm
My
not very
birthday
good.
in 4 days, by the way.
Well, we know. So we've been getting the hints.
Have you?
We've been getting the hints.
Oh my god.
And you know, my phone actually reminds me now.
Yes, because you sent me a thing like, when is your birthday? Send it to me now.
Oh, that's because my PA over there, we are intentional.
Obviously.
It was actually part of my 2022.
Yeah, like send it to me. I was like, huh?
Oh yeah, I did that at the beginning of the year when all
Yeah.
my loved ones and all my closest and dearest, I sent everybody a message like, "When's your birthday?" Because I realized that I kept forgetting, right? And the reason why the forgetting was so disruptive to me because they didn't give you enough time to plan, and then you find out that you're now double booked. Because I have people who have literally birthdays, in the same days.
Right.
And then I, obviously my own calendar, I'm trying to balance. Okay, let me go back. At the beginning of the year, I said to myself, it was part of my goals for 2022. I was going to be more intentional about spending more time with my friends and loved ones, right? Because I'd noticed that over the years, work has been dragging me
Away.
further and further and further from everybody. And I didn't like that. Because I genuinely love people,
Yeah.
right? So I was finding that work. And because I wasn't getting that balance and COVID didn't help because we were all separated, weren't we? And I'm such a people person that I felt like I was having withdrawal symptoms.
Oh God. Yeah.
I was, and it wasn't allowing me to enjoy work the same way that I was. So I realized that, okay, I need to have that balance, right?
Yeah.
So to compensate for the amount of dedication I have towards work, I need to reward myself with my loved ones. So beginning of the year, I wrote in my diary, I said, for 2022, I need to be more intentional about setting time aside to spend with my friends and loved ones. So I put it in there and I instructed my sister, and I was like, we need a birthday calendar. That's when you got the message.
Yeah.
And I was like, babe, when's your birthday?
Because you sent it to me, you're like, date and year or something.
Yes,
I was like, girl. So
because-
at first, like, it's funny because you sent it to me, but then I think I had just read something on the internet where it's just like, oh, be careful because sometimes people nest as your friend. Like, you would think that it was your friend who was messaging you, but they've cloned your friend's account.
Oh.
Or something. Do you get what I mean?
Oh, for security reasons.
Yeah, so I was like...
I think it was a message from
No.
a bank fraudster.
Yeah, no, because that happened to me last year on my birthday.
Never.
So I couldn't use my bank app.
Okay, you need to take account of this. If we're asking people for their birthdays, and they're scared that we're running fraud on their...
Yeah, because I thought, So like literally on my birthday, I was trying to use my bank app and I couldn't use it. So I was trying to call the customer service and I couldn't get through. And I went on their Instagram page and I could see that people were having the same issue. So then, they replied saying, please, message us on because they have a WhatsApp platform that they use. There's even a name for it or whatever. But obviously it was someone who was nesting on their account and
Wow.
Yeah, so I messaged them like, yeah, this is the issue I have. Blah, blah, blah. They're like, oh, thanks for letting us know. Please confirm your date of birth so that we can. So I was sure that it's you.
Is that how we worded it? That's not how I worded it, was it?
No.
Please confirm your date of birth.
It wasn't you. But that's what happened. So basically, I gave them my date of birth, and they got into my account and whatever, right?
Oh wow.
So so when you sent that, I was just like. But then when you sent it again, I was like, okay, it's really her. because yeah, some I don't know if you've seen this thing on WhatsApp where sometimes it will seem like a friend is asking you like, oh, Demi, I've just mistakenly put in your number. I'm trying to get into my WhatsApp and I mistakenly put in your number as my blah, 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 blah. They've just sent you my confirmation code. Can you send it to me?
Oh, wow.
And then you send it to them and they literally are you now on WhatsApp and they're messaging your friends and family asking for money. And that happened to my brother last year as well. Right. So,
That
and my
is
mom
super
sent money.
scary.
Like people sent money like, oh my God, there's a child who's like sick or whatever. And they put the pictures on WhatsApp and they go to all your groups and they message. You know what I mean?
Oh.
So exactly. So when you sent that, I was like, is that really her? because it was just random. It wasn't. It was just like, oh, please send me. So I was like, and then later you're like, please send. I was like, okay.
It's really me.
It's really
but I had to be very intentional about it. And it's funny because, so I have an accountability partner. I don't know if you have one. So I have friends that I've enrolled as my accountability partners. So when I set goals for myself, I have to let them know about it, right? So that they can sort of check in. So we just did, and we normally sort of check in every quarter. Okay, how are you? Are you on track with this? Are you on track with that? If you're falling behind, they're like the person to basically tell you, here's a little nudge, like get back on track, dude. So we just had our end of year accountability meeting, right? And we were like, okay, let's bring up the lists and let's run through it. And it was pure banter. It was pure banter in the sense that it was like, oh, okay. First and foremost, some of the goals we set were ridiculous.
Like what?
Some were ridiculous. Some we had actually achieved. I think on my list, I did like, 2/3 of what I put on my list. So I was super proud of myself that I've actually accomplished that much. Yeah. And then it now gave me the nudge to catch up on several of them in the last month of December. And I don't know if you noticed, Ogie, I'm talking to my sister. If you didn't even notice, I started my swimming lessons last week.
I've been doing mine for a year.
I went back to swimming last year because I realized that swimming was on my goal, and I'd started the year very well, and then somehow I dropped off, and then life happened. So when I went through my list again, and my friend was like, excuse me, you said you were going to be doing Olympic pool by this end of the year. What's happened to that goal? She reminded me, and she kind of shamed me a little bit as well. Yes, I'm saying you shamed me, and you know who you are. She shamed me a little bit. So literally the next day I messaged my parents like, swimming lessons every Wednesday, please. So I'm back on track. So I'm hoping by the end of December, we did a deep end of the pool actually, not too. Last week
I tread water now.
I tread water.
You do? Oh my god! That was always my dream, and I can do it now, but I want to do it for longer. I want to.
Only one lesson though. Only had one lesson. So
in treading, and you're already doing it.
Well, I'm doing it per se. I'm not necessarily.
No, it's a good start.
I'm not an expert. I've got some footage.
Oh, okay.
It's not so flattering, but I've got footage of me sort of attempting to tread water. But I got into the deep end, and initially I was so scared. I was literally I was scared, but I was brave. Okay. So I did it scared, right? Good. Which is something that you guys
do it afraid. Do it afraid.
I'm very good at doing things afraid. So I did that. So I know I'm back on track. So let's see what December looks like.
Okay.
But speaking about December, speaking about sort of the year coming to an end, what were your goals this year that you set for yourself?
Girl. I mean, my year went completely differently from what I had imagined. I had a completely different set of problems than I thought I would, So I just, at some point I stopped tracking, and I was just like, you need to calm down, FK. And
were you overthinking it?
I wasn't overthinking it. I was just,
panicking?
Not panicking, but when you set goals, right? You set goals based on your current reality, and don't realize that life can take you in completely different ways.
Yeah.
And that it's okay for your goals to change, because the current realities are not as they were when you set the goals, right? But for me, I was still struggling to meet up with goals. I was like, listen, that's no longer what life is like. So maybe you need to take stock of your goals and see what's still possible. Stick with that, including swimming. So for example, last year I couldn't tread water. I'm doing that now. Congratulations.
Well done.
But there's certain other things as well that I was like, well, I guess 2022 ain't gonna be the year. But it took me a while to realize that it's okay, you can do it next.
David, is everything all right? I'm seeing the cameraman have a really good time there. Is everything okay? I'm glad to see you're happy. Well done. With your she's wobbling his head, having a good time. Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, so it was, it took me a while to admit. I realized I was in denial. Like, it took me a while to admit that, you need to review your goals, and that's okay. Like, it doesn't mean that you're betraying yourself, because I'm very, very conscious of betraying myself, because I've done so in the past, So I felt like, things need to be a certain way. I need to do it, and I've set this but girl, things have changed. Calm down, The ones that you can do, the ones that are a possibility, stick to them. And the ones that are not, maybe you'll do them next year. Maybe you'll be a bit more, and you give yourself room. Like, hey, things didn't go as I thought that they...
It is what it is. They don't always go to plan.
Yeah.
But it's funny, I posted something the other day, and on this exact thing, where it was like this little comic thing on my Instagram where this guy's driving a car and the car breaks down just literally like a foot from the destination.
I saw that.
Did you see
was that yesterday? I think
that was yesterday, yeah.
Oh my God. And yes, that's me.
But
that is me.
that's where you are right now. But I feel like I've been there as well. So that ability for you to not be so attached to the goal.
Yeah. So wait, actually, you should explain the.
Okay, so let me explain. So it's a little cartoon thing. If you guys follow me on Instagram, please, by all means, go into my Instagram, and it might still be there. I think it disappears in the next few hours or whatever. So this little cartoon illustration where this character is driving a little mini van with all his stuff on top of it, and there's a little signage at the end of the cliff, in fact, that says,
This is the goal.
This is the goal. That was his goal. So literally, the car breaks down about a foot from that goal. So he gets out of the car, he opens the bonnet, and obviously he's very, very disappointed. Oh God, what's going on? He's kicking the car, pissed off. And I think in the end, he kind of just accepts the situation, bends down on his knees and starts sobbing. Which I thought was so cute. That's literally what it sounded like.
I think it sounds like me, actually. Yeah.
So he bends down and starts sobbing. And then in the middle of this sob, a bloody ginormous rock,
a boulder
falls from the skies and hits the edge of the cliff, and then you hear this massive crack just at the front of his car, and the edge of the cliff collapses. So what now looks like, as you said, the original goal had now disappeared.
So his goal was to get there, and if he was there,
he would have
gone down with the cliff.
The cliff,
but this car stopped right
at the hem of it,
literally, and he was and for me, I've seen that happen where it's just like, listen, sometimes things are, there are blocks, or there are, certain barriers, or things don't work for a reason. It's hard at the time when it's happening because it's frustrating. And we're taught to set goals and plan. If you don't plan to fail, blah, 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 all that stuff, right? And it's good to have a goal in mind, but sometimes life just has a different plan for you. And unless the car breaks down, you will drive yourself literally to the point of ruin because you're pursuing your goals, whereas maybe that goal is not for you. Do you get what I mean? And it's very hard for someone like me because I like to be in control of myself. I don't want to control anybody else, but I like to be in control of myself. You know what I mean? And when things happen outside of my control, I feel helpless, but I've learned to just stop and accept, right? So I'm not, I don't get pissed off anymore, like when things don't go the way that it's frustrating. I hate it. I hate being in that position, but I
think we all do, really.
But I'm at a point where I'm just like, okay, you know what? If this is not meant to work out, let me just, take my gaze away.
So this is basically, it's the difference between perseverance and is it perseverance? It's okay. So there's a difference between how do I push?
I think it's surrender.
And to surrender.
It's
but
surrender.
Then there's a thin line between surrender and giving up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's very fine line.
Yeah.
And when we're always pushing these messages like you persevere in your goals, and it's like, is it really the goal? Because the goal doesn't really change, right? You're trying to get somewhere. But where you perceive to be the route to that goal is usually where the confusion comes from, and is usually where the disappointment comes from, because you're fixated on the road and the path to it. But the goal, I don't think the goal really ever changes.
But sometimes it does change. Because
okay,
I was
that's
listening
true.
to something on my way here, and I thought, oh, that's really profound. It's something I've always thought, that you shouldn't view the world through the limits of your mind. Like, your mind is limited in where it can, like, in what it can perceive, right? In what it can. In your mind, you think, oh, this is as far as I can go. Oh my God, this is as big as I can go. And then you realize, oh shit, like I'm literally limited in whatever my brain perceives to be the highest limit. So sometimes I do find that goals change. I mean, I feel ultimately like maybe the objective is to be happy,
Yeah, so the question now becomes, what does happiness look like?
What does happiness look like? So those are now the little goals that would lead
like
you
the
to
stepping
the
stones,
exactly.
right?
So those things change. So you're right in a way, but I think that sometimes where you think you need to be, where you think you need to go, is really just limited in a way.
But I also think like sometimes the goal that we are giving ourselves isn't really a place. right? Sometimes and this is why we have to be very, very clear on what the actual goal is, right? So if someone says, oh, my goal is to buy a house by 2025, is buying a house really the goal, or having security? Which one is the actual goal? Is it in attaining that home, you're looking for security, you're looking for stability, you're looking for solid ground, you're looking for somewhere you can build and you can rely on, a resting place. So maybe that really is the goal, which is supposed to be articulated, as opposed to the route. What does the house really represent? It's a representation of the goals, right? What is your representation of what your goal really looks like? So maybe sometimes that representation is really what is changing. I don't imagine your goal is changing. I know for a fact, Folake Alli, you're still trying to be a badass in your space. So I don't see your goal necessarily change, because I think your goal is very, very ambitious, and it should be. But that path is ever changing and ever evolving, and maybe the path, you don't get to the, let's just say, the milestones in the time frames in which we give ourselves. I said to myself, by the time I was going to be 30, I was going to be a millionaire. And I remember one of my friends from college, she came up to me one day, and I had not seen her in about 3 years or so, and she'd been watching my journey from a distance. And this is where social media is so bloody dangerous. And she'd been watching my journey from a distance. And when I saw her, and we had a little catch up, and we had a little, how's everything? How's this? And she ended the conversation with me. She didn't end the conversation, but she, the conversation quickly led to a question. And the question she asked me was, how many millions have you made yet?
Girl.
I was like,
wow.
Well, I'm
Do you mean millions of naira?
And a little part of me kind of sank a little bit, right? I sank a little bit, and because she reminded me of that goal. So I had actually moved on from that particular goal, right? And it wasn't necessarily making the millions was the goal. For me, it was, how quickly could I grow my business? How many customers could I serve? And what would be the ultimate measurement and representation of that goal?
Growth,
growth. It would be the fact that I've probably made $1 million, right? And if I'd made $1 million, it would be like, wow, this is a very profitable business. So that would give me that reassurance that I am building something that is worthwhile, right? So when she reminded me of that moment, a little part of my brain sank, or my heart sank, and my brain said, oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
What a silly goal. Right? Yeah. But obviously I didn't say that to her. I just said to her, oh, darling, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process.
We're getting there.
But then it also was a moment of realization for me that, you know what? This stuff takes far longer than you think, sweetheart.
But it's also, like you said, like looking deeper in what having $1 million would mean to you, and it's about growing your business. But you can look even deeper, like, why do you want to grow your business? It's because you want to feel a sense of accomplishment from your efforts. Like, okay, I've been putting in efforts, and I want to feel like I've done something. I want to feel like I've contributed to something.
Yes.
Right? And obviously it would be nice if that thing brings you money, but it's really at the end of the day about your efforts yielding results. Right, and that
there's a level of satisfaction
that comes with that.
That comes with that, right? So you want to feel that you are in fact useful. You want to feel that your work means something. Yeah. Not only does it mean something, it makes a difference, right? So it's not so much about the money. Of course, we all want to make money, and to be honest, I think it's always a cliche when someone says it's not about the money. My dear, the money is important because the money represents a lot of things for me personally. Because in running a business, there's a lot of things that ride on the success of that business. Many lives are impacted. You're paying people's salaries. You're thank you so much, Oge. You're paying people's salaries. You are making a difference in your communities. You're building a legacy for yourself.
Yes, entire families depend on your success to survive.
Right.
Like, if your business doesn't, like I was telling a friend of mine, I said, listen, you literally have a whole generation. Like, you have, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 employees, and in your mind, right? Because for her, she got into this thing where she's like, oh, I'm not my business, I'm a separate entity, blah, blah, blah. I said, cool, but you are the owner of the business. Every penny that this business makes, right, is heavily dependent on the decisions that you make. You are carrying an entire generation in your back. You have 15 employees. Each of those employees have families. Each of those employees have people that depend on them, right? Your activities directly impact their happiness, their success, the success of their families. Like, there's so much more to the work that we do than what meets the eye and the $1 million that you're making. It's about, like, people's livelihoods depend on you, right? It's a heavy burden, but I think it's
big social equity right there. It's not, it goes deeper than just the money, right? Because even for me, it's like, what drives me every day? It's not the money that I'm necessarily making. That's just one of the benefits of it. But it really is, for me, it's like, it's that impact. It's the way I'm seeing it touch many and leave a dent in this world, right? It's a reason for me to get up. But for those days, for me, when I typically feel like, oh, my body just wants to rest. What is that noise? It's coming from upstairs. Okay. For those days when I just want to rest, something has to get you up. For those days when it's not working, where things are upside down, inside out, what is the reason? And we've had so many of those days. I've actually gotten used to those days. Those days now become, I've actually trained my brain to perceive those days of disappointment, even moments where they're very, very hard. The observer is still speaking to me, and I've learned to just accept them as, you know what, for every no, for every setback is one step closer to where I need to be, right? It might seem like a setback, but it might actually be a saving grace, right? It's not everything is a personal reflection of my wins and my losses, right? Sometimes it might look like that, it might present as that, but I'm not God. And I have to remind myself not to try and play God, even in my own journey, even in my own story, right? And it's so easy because that's ego. It's the ego speaking, right? That it's, you know, it's if it works, it's you did that. And you're amazing.
And that's what I spoke about control. Like, I like to be in control of my life and myself. But like, literally, so when things don't go my way, it's very hard for me. But that's what I spoke about when I said surrender. And you said there's a thin line between surrender and giving up. But I think it's your mindset at the moment of surrender that differentiates it from giving up. Right. So what I've learned about surrender is, okay, I'm here. This hasn't worked out. Maybe I should switch my focus. Or what am I missing here? Or like, listen, I've tried my best. I've done everything I can to make sure that this works, but it hasn't. So I'm going to surrender it, and then maybe shift my focus to something else. And if I'm redirected, because sometimes life just redirects you in a way that you don't even recognize as well. Do you get what I mean? So it's to not allow yourself to be defeated or to feel like, oh God, this is the end of it, or I was so stupid or whatever. I feel like I'm doing that really well in surrendering and accepting that, you know, life is trying to direct you towards what's best for you. And you need to allow it. Like, you need to allow that to happen. But you can't do that with a defeatist mindset. And, you know, deciding to change your focus sometimes doesn't mean that you're giving up. It just means maybe you're trying to refresh your mind. Just, you know, you don't feel like, oh, this is the end for me and nothing can ever work out. Like, you know. But sometimes changing your focus, like, okay, maybe there's something I'm missing here. Maybe, you know what, I'm going to change my focus, or I'm going to try and do things a bit differently. You know, so the mindset is what distinguishes between surrender and giving up. You know, so sometimes if you decide to stop something, is your mindset at a point where you're just like, I can't do anything right, like nothing I do works, and I'm just not
stop trying.
Yeah.
Right. So what kind of gifts are you expecting this year? Talking about
not
Christmas,
expecting
around
any
the corner.
gifts.
We're already in December.
I don't remember.
Are you big on gifts?
No, not really. I mean, they're nice, like you said, when it's functional, when it's something that is useful and something I need, then yeah, absolutely. But
what's the best gift you've ever received?
I don't know. Okay, you know, I'll just give an explanation, right? And I say this story a lot. So I have a bag that is not necessarily a bag that I would usually, like, I would pick out for myself, that I would buy for myself, you know, that I, you know, necessarily would consider like to be my style. But I received this bag from someone and I was like, oh, okay. And they're like, oh yeah, I noticed how you, like, when you're driving, when you get into your car, like, you throw your bag to the other side, like to the passenger seat, right? And your bag spills over and everything spills out. So I wanted to get you a bag with a zip, just so that, because I know that you throw your bag, I wanted to make sure that the stuff doesn't spill out, and so I decided to get you a bag with a zip. And my impression of that gift completely changed. Like, initially for me, it was just a bag. But for me, I was just so, like, I was so touched by this person knowing me and not saying, how about don't throw your bag? It's like, I know that this is what you do, but in order to make that a bit less cumbersome for you, I'm going to get you something that would kind of...
Well, allowed you to be you, but still keeps your stuff together.
Pretty much. And for me, that was the best thing anybody has ever said to me. I was like, oh my God, I really love that. I love the idea.
So that's really, really sweet. That's so sweet. Do you still have the bag?
I still do.
You still use it?
I don't use it.
Really?
But it's there.
It's there. So every time you see it, you're reminded of that moment?
I'm reminded of that moment. And for me, it's like the best, like one of the best. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I love that. Because people are like, how about you stop throwing your bag? Oh, maybe I won't.
Habits,
so I really
habits
like
die
that.
hard.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my best gift. And I get gifts and I love receiving gifts. It's actually one of my love languages, but not for the reasons that you might assume it's for. So the best gift I've ever received, and even when I think of it, I'm still filled with that same feeling I felt the day I got it. It's just such a pleasant, warming, and very endearing feeling. It just makes me feel loved, right? So I was studying architecture, and I was dating somebody at the time, and in my architecture days, we used to wake up very, very early to go to the print house to go and print, our portfolio and whatever presentation we're going to be doing for that day or maybe that week. And I used to hate that process because it meant I had to wake up super early and travel across London in the dead of winter, because to me, every day in England is winter minus 1 month in the year. And because I'm always cold, I'm forever cold. So I used to wake up super, super early and go and queue with a bunch of other students from very different universities to go and print these things. And it used to be so uncomfortable. Well, yeah, it was just one of those inconveniences I just didn't want to have to deal with. Yeah. But I had to always do it, and I hated it. And a lot of the time I was always running late because I just never ever woke up in time and did things in time. Just to go and print my large sort of architecture sheets of my drawings and technical drawings and all of that. And one day I came home, and I think it was actually for, I don't know if it was for my birthday, I think it was actually for Christmas. I come home and there's this ginormous box waiting for me. And then we get round to opening the gift and stuff, and it was an A3 printer.
So random.
Super random.
Yeah, but to you.
But to me, it wasn't, because the moment I opened that box, my eyes lit up. I realized that my world is going to change from that day.
Yeah.
Because no more early getting up for me. I can now print my large sheets of paper within the comfort of my home.
Yeah.
And I didn't have to now deal or contend with that public transport that used to make me feel so irky early in the morning. Yeah. I'm cold, I'm a little bit irritated, and on top of that, I'm having to get on the tube. It was just terrible, honestly. So that printer for me just meant a lot. And the fact that individual had actually thought of me that deeply to think, what does she actually need? What is going to make her life easy? Yeah. So when I say that gifts given is one of my love languages, it's not really, I think for me it's an act of service, which is really ultimately, in terms of my hierarchy of love languages, probably, acts of service is definitely up there. Yeah. But those acts of service has to be things that really are
meaningful,
very meaningful, and really adapting adapting to my life and lifestyle. It's going to
and
make it
understanding of who you are.
how I operate, you know,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
my mode of operatus, right?
Yeah.
You know, do things that actually make sense to me, cater it to the individual,
Yeah,
not just, you know, everybody's buying a handbag. Let me get you a
Let me get-
handbag.
yeah, exactly,
Oh, do you want to
no.
get this fancy watch? I'm
Yeah,
just like,
don't
okay, it
care
looks
about that.
nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to say thank you. I'll be grateful. But ultimately, those things that really, really just make a difference
Yeah.
in my day-to-day life, really
Yeah.
for me are
The
the
best.
best gifts.
But you know, not everyone's like that. So I have a friend, right? And so many years ago, her boyfriend came to me and said, oh, so it's your friend's birthday. I want to get her something or whatever. And the mistake I made was assuming that she was like me, in the sense that she would need she would want something that was like, that would make her life easier. So we used to do like so every month we had our beauty treatments, like we had like full body wax, nails, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm used to complain about like, oh my God, this costs so much. Like, why you know what I mean? We were young, we were kind of we were in law school at the time. So, you know, I was like, wouldn't it be nice if you could cover that cost? Like, so go to the place where we go and just cover it for the next few months. How about that? And we thought, oh my God, what a great idea. Like, oh my God. And he gave it to her. She came to me and she was just like,
What a
like,
terrible gift.
this is not a gift. Like, what? You know what I mean? And the thing is, I couldn't be upset because I was just like, no, the mistake I made was that
Assuming that
I assumed
yeah.
that because I would find that quite meaningful and useful, that she would too. But she was like, no, buy me a watch, buy me the bag, like, you know, whatever it is. Like, I don't want something functional. What the hell's wrong with you? You know, but it just shows you how
We're all very different.
all very different.
Which
you
is
know?
interesting.
Yeah.
Which is very, very interesting. Right. And you're absolutely right. Because even in my own gift giving, I always try and think, okay, what's practical for that? What's that person going to actually enjoy? And it's not easy.
Yeah, it's
It
not.
really isn't
It's
easy.
Not. It's not.
And how can you do that year on year and strike lucky and really understand?
No, but don't think too much. You know, at the end of the day, yes, as much as, you know, obviously I feel like if you know a person, you know what they might enjoy. But at the end of the day, if you feel that you want to give someone a gift and you put some thought into it, even just a little bit, even if it's like I said, like with the bag, like if he presented me with a bag, oh, it's a nice bag, thanks, whatever.
But they had that added.
But for me, that's one of my favorite bags because of the thought that went into it. Like, oh my God, like, okay, yeah, well, thanks. Because I really just appreciate that someone appreciates me for who I am and they're not trying to change me or whatever. You know what I mean? A part of who I am that's not perfect and it's not all that well put together. And they're like, okay, how can I help you in this, your non-put together life?
It's funny because if you're just going a step further, it's also kind of, it's a moment of acceptance.
Yes.
That person accepted you for
who
who
I
you
am,
are,
yeah.
and wasn't motivated to try and change that,
Yeah,
but
or
was
even like point it out, like why
pointed.
do you always do
Yes,
this?
but ultimately accept that's who she is. How can I help? Right? That's ultimate.
Yeah.
So that's the ultimate act of service.
Yeah,
surely.
absolutely, 100%.
That is so lovely.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so in giving gifts, you know, what type of gifts will you be expecting this year?
None. I don't expect
Really?
any gifts. Like, honestly.
You don't expect any gifts?
No.
Guys, if you guys are listening, like, listen, I'm not Folake Alli. I'm expecting gifts.
not expecting
I
any,
think if anyone were to ask me what's the worst gift you've ever gotten, I think the worst gift I've ever gotten is a gift I'd never received.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I don't have any worst
seriously.
gifts. Like, for me, it's just like, you know, if someone gives me a gift, I always imagine that there's a thought behind it. I don't like when the gift is from a place of manipulation, right? So
Okay, well, that's a whole different.
that's a whole different.
Yeah.
So I don't like that where like someone is trying to achieve something or they're trying to get you to do something or trying to get you to see something or do whatever it is. And then they get a gift because they know you, right? And they use that to their advantage. I don't like that.
I've never thought about that.
I have.
And I don't imagine it working on me either.
It didn't work, but I really hated it because, you know, I could see the live manipulation happening and because of the proximity. The person understood.
Does that stop you from enjoying the gift?
Yes. No, not that. Yeah, I don't want it. You know, I've seen it, but it's just like, I want you to agree to something. I want you to accept something. So I'm going to do this because I know that you need this. Blah,
Oh
blah, blah.
dear,
But it's just,
I have never
not
thought.
because-
So that's just making me now go back and reevaluating all my gift receiving moments.
Where is it coming from? Where is it coming from?
Was I manipulated?
Yeah. You can be manipulated, and I don't like that. So for me, in general, gifts don't move me. You know, like a gift of itself doesn't move me.
It feels nice, but it shouldn't be something that is able to, hold something over you. That's
it's the motivation behind the gift that it really gives me, like that makes it all that more like special. Like, oh my God, this person knows me so well that they know that this, you know what I mean? Someone thinking of you in that way.
I think that's what it is. Just the idea, just to be reminded that someone thought about you,
In the right way.
Someone thought about you enough to want to buy you a gift. But if it's, if it's going to be one of those, oh, I'm buying you this because I expect this. I can't recall anybody ever saying that to me. And if they did,
they won't say it, but you can sense it.
Okay, so you're feeling it from,
Like I know exactly what you're trying to do. Thanks, but
no thanks. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so thinking about, the sort of things I'll be sort of doing this season. So there's a lot of activities I want to kind of get involved in. I want to round up my year in such a way that I just feel that, I've accomplished something. I've done something new. I've made a little bit of a difference. I just generally just feel like, yes, this has been it's been a tough year, but ultimately, we're filled with gratitude at some point. So what are the things for you that kind of brings about that sort of feeling of what would bring for you the feeling of accomplishment at the end of this year?
Bloody hell, Jesus. No, so a feeling of accomplishment. I mean, I've survived. I'm alive.
The ultimate, yes.
But to be honest, I would really just like to see some of the efforts I've put into certain projects sort of come to fruition. And again, it's really sad that I'm equating my accomplishments to work, but I think it would be nice to see efforts come to fruition, but also really just ending the year intact, like mentally, physically, and even being healthy, having not had any major illnesses this year, that sort of thing. Listen, I'm thankful.
I think you've done brilliantly, to be honest. We've had our conversations. We've gone into it. We've come out of it. We've dissected, and we've had those girlfriend moments where you're just like, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
Like, what's really happening?
Yeah.
Like, just talk to me, right? And I think you've done well, because my dear, everybody has their moments when life happens, right? Yeah. And it's like, how do you deal with it? What demonstrates that strength and capacity to deal and to overcome it, really? And I've watched you do that.
Oh God.
I've watched you do that, and it's not easy, because you see so many try and they fail, and people give up. Really give up. I've seen people really give up and be like, this is not working, and it's just like, give up Betsy or whatever you want to call them, and whatever, and it's just like, you just whatever, and then that start giving into whatever life now wants to throw. At least be able to hold on to some semblance of, let me just give myself some grace, let me give myself some time, I will come back stronger and better. This is just a process, right? To be able to even give that to yourself and do that for yourself is really, really powerful. And I watched you do it.
Jeez, thank you. It's not make me cry. It's been an incredibly challenging year. I would say that for sure, because it's always just wondering if am I doing enough? Yes, there are a lot of things that are not within my control, but am I doing enough to get to where I want to go? And even if I'm doing it, am I doing it in the right direction? That's a $1 million question. Do any of us even know the answer to that? Really, we're trying to figure it out, but nobody has it figured out. A question has popped into my mind, and I think we were almost about sort of tackling this earlier. What you prefer, riding a horse? It's so random, but you've got to keep some space for those random ones, right? Riding a horse, riding a car, and riding a bike. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, not riding a bike, because I learned how to ride a bike pretty late. I was still a child, but pretty late. Like I was like,
but 10. Not a bicycle. A bike.
A motorbike.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how to ride those, so it won't be that. Even though I was like, this summer I was on a couple of my friends I was with this summer, they owned scooters, and I was always
in Nigeria.
I was always on their backs, holding on to them very tightly. Is it my preferred mode of transportation? No. Horse. Okay, horse sounds very romantic, right? And I said this. But you need to be you need to be aware that there are certain hazards that come with riding a horse. So apart from the amount of like lower body strength that you need to stay and steady yourself on a horse, there is also a bouncing motion that can contribute to your boobs sagging.
I feel like, stop it.
No, I'm serious. Listen, I saw this on TV. There's a lady who got breast implants, right? And she's equestrian. She rides horses. She does like all the competitions. She's fantastic. However, so she took a video, and there's the motion of even just like bouncing on a horse.
Yeah.
And because of that motion, she actually got some major
Stop it.
saggage. Major saggage where she had to go and get it fixed.
Why do I find that so difficult? I think,
It's
so
true.
maybe she was susceptible to sagging in the first
No.
place. It
There's
wasn't a case of,
motion.
oh my
Like,
God,
maybe
the
she
horse
didn't-
sagged my,
maybe
I've
she didn't
never
get,
heard of
like,
this.
Maybe she didn't get like proper support, but that was the case.
It must be.
And the issue with support, as you probably know, is that you need to strike a balance between being able to breathe comfortably and having right support.
Okay, so I've done all three. I've ridden I used to ride a bike. That's how I pretty much got around in London. Obviously cars, we all drive cars, and then I am actually very fond of horse riding. And it was never ever occurred to me that in my enjoyment, because those moments for me are very, very enjoyable, and I'm just galloping along, and I'm speaking to this horse.
Individual.
And I'm speaking to them, and I'm pretending to myself that they understand me and they're listening to me, and we're having this bonding moment or whatever. It never occurred to me that I needed to consider the fact that I might be getting saggy tits because
you might be.
I'm enjoying my
It's a thing. And her doctor said it. He's like, yeah, because of that. And they showed it to us. It's like, it's a constant downward movement.
But how often is she riding? Is that her favorite mode of transportation around the town or something?
Like, that's what she does for a living. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
So she's like constantly like hours and hours a day. So that
Training.
Listen, we're human. Like body parts fall. Like, you know what I mean?
I do wonder if this is like
It's a thing.
real
Do you know
thing.
You can Google it. But I
I'm
remember
definitely
seeing
gonna be
this.
Googling that
And when she
later.
said it, I was like, yo. But it's the same thing. Like, so for example, running without support when you need the support. That's why you have like sports bras and things like that.
Yeah.
Because the support is important. The motion can, do all sorts of things.
That's a lot of movement.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
That's very worrying. Never ever occurred to me. So, all right. So when I start horse riding again, I should just be very, very aware that I need to have
Proper support.
That's going to. But I'm not riding that
Keep
often
things
to
in
keep
place.
things in place.
Yeah.
Thinking about we're not 16-year-olds anymore. What I would like to describe us as fine women. We're getting better. I'd like to think we're getting better with age, but ultimately we're aging, and we're thinking about a lot more sort of serious topics and life, considering life issues, and we're having conversations that are a little bit more mature than oh my God, I like him, he loves me, I like him, he loves me. We're having real serious life discussions these days. And as you sort of go through your journey and as you're evolving, are you actually noticing key changes in yourself as a woman who is now embarking in a new we're on the other side of 30 now, aren't we? And we're kind of approaching.
Speak for yourself, excuse me. Yeah.
Well,
I'm joking.
So, and we're sort of maturing, and we're talking life now. Are you noticing anything yourself, particularly that you sort of feel has robbed you of anything from when you were considerably younger?
I mean, I think I wish I was not actively, but sometimes I wish I was a bit more naive. I think
you think you've lost that naivety.
Yeah, I think I was a bit. I wish I was a bit more naive. I wish I was a bit less aware of certain things.
Ignorance is bliss
in some situations, but being aware of both myself, my surroundings, people, what they can be like, all that self betrayal, so much to consider. It's like a heavy burden. Like, I'm happy with that burden sometimes, but sometimes I wish I didn't know certain things. I wish I, in fact, maybe found out about them like later in life, but just the awareness, like just knowing certain things and being just kind of switched on has robbed me of of a lot of things, man. Like, but I'm grateful for it, honestly. Listen, you know,
because it could be a very dangerous world when you're not aware of some of these things, right?
Yes,
so it kind of guides how you move.
Yeah.
And the choices that you make.
Yeah. So for that reason, I'm grateful. But, you know, I wish I didn't know this. Then I would be able to just dive into certain things and not worry about consequences or whatever. But, like, you know, I've lost that naivety. I've lost, like, a lot of innocence in certain things, just, you know, from life and watching life happen both to me and to other people as well, where it's just like, oh God, I wish I didn't.
Well, the information about horse riding, I feel like it's made me lose something.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I've lost a little bit of joy in that activity now, just
so you don't
just from having that
Yeah,
information.
exactly. And it's it's little things like that. It's just like now being aware, like, oh God, there's a risk that this, and like, you know. But, you know, ultimately, I don't wish I was younger. I don't wish to go back in time. Everything that's happened to me, everything that I've learned along the way has made me who I am now, and I absolutely love it. I'm happy to be where I am now. I'm happy for the lessons. And I think the most important thing, and something I'm still sort of trying to navigate, is, you know, the issue of self-betrayal. You know, and, you know, we were talking about an inner voice and earlier, you know, and I've betrayed myself in the past, you know, not actively knowing that I'm betraying myself, you know, and how can you tell when you're betraying yourself? Something just doesn't feel quite right. So I'm very, very aware of that. And I do still betray myself sometimes, but I'm able to catch it and recognize it and name things like, oh, that's what that is, you know. It's not a great feeling to betray yourself, but it's also, you know, it's important to know when that's happening, to catch it when it's happening, and to try and prevent it from happening again.
Be able to reconcile it in such a way that you're not internalizing it.
Internalizing the self-betrayal.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, self-betrayal has internal consequences at the end of the day, and that's the reason why you try to prevent yourself from betraying yourself. But I think the key is not you know, more about internalizing it as it's about reducing the frequency of it, right? It's staying true to yourself, same way you would be loyal to your friends. And the same way you would try your best not to betray your friends. Why, when it comes to you, do you feel like it's okay to betray yourself? You have certain boundaries with your friends. You have certain boundaries, and you know that I would never cross this line with this person because I don't want to lose the relationship I have with them, or I respect them too much to do this. Why, when it comes to yourself, do you, and self-betrayal is, and it's in the little things. Like, it's not even in like what you would expect, like a big massive thing. It's in the little things of like trusting your intuition, and when that voice is loud, you trying to logically silence the voice, right? Where something just doesn't feel right, and then you start questioning yourself. Oh, am I being a bit too? Oh, is this blah, blah, blah. But you know, actually, so it's not in those moments where there's uncertainty. It's in those moments where you know that something is, sometimes you're not able to place a finger on it, but you know that something is not right. Like for me, there's a tingle that goes through my body when I betray myself. Like it's a physical manifestation.
Did you have that in your early 20s, that feeling? Do you think it lived in you then? Or
it did, but I didn't know what it was.
Interesting.
The idea of self-betrayal was just not even a reality to me. It wasn't until a few years ago I was like, oh, that's what that is. I never want to do that again. I never want to feel that way again. You know, it's you just even sometimes feeling like you're not being sincere with yourself, you know, and just going against what you know is true inside you. But I feel like sometimes you do need to betray yourself a few times to recognize it.
That's what it is.
So that from afar, you'll be like, yeah, no, we ain't doing this again. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's really, really powerful. And I hope that it's something that, again, it's that the difference between recognizing that and not allowing it to eat you up because some people would internalize it in such a way that it's like you are terrible. You are,
like you said,
a failure.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
As opposed to, oh,
you messed up.
I messed up there. I shouldn't allow myself to get that. But I think being able to identify that word itself is actually very, very powerful. Self-betrayal, knowing that you've actually betrayed yourself in this moment, and it's actually something you can actually course correct.
Yeah.
moving forward
Yeah.
is a very, very powerful thing. And it's funny because I used the word self-soothe earlier, and this kind of grasped me as one of those self-soothing moments where you've betrayed yourself, or you're able to recognize that you are not your mistake.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
All you've done, you've betrayed yourself, and you shouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
Terrible, terrible, terrible girl. Don't do that to yourself again.
Yeah.
But you are not your mistake.
Yeah. That's not who
and
you
even,
are now.
And even in the moments where you make those mistakes, give yourself enough grace to recognize that you have learned your lesson.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that lesson was needed
At that
moment in order for you to now understand how to best recognize it if it ever appears again.
And I feel like with our friends, right? Like if our friends mess up, we don't tell them like you're terrible, you're horrible, you're blah, blah.
You do that to yourself.
We encourage them. We say hey, guys, like listen, this happened. It's okay. Like don't beat yourself up. But when it comes to you, you're just like, you're horrible. What sort of person are you? Like these are some of the inner dialogues that we have with ourselves, especially as women. We're really hard on ourselves. And I said, sometimes there is a place for that, like to hold yourself to a very high standard. But sometimes
there's a line. That's what I was saying earlier. There's a line, and you have to learn not to cross it. I've treaded that line several times, and it's one of those. It's that self-awareness moment to know when you are approaching it, to know that you shouldn't cross over to that side, and to be kind to yourself as you are to others. I would never tell you that you are awful person. I would never say that to you because you've made a mistake. But I would, do you understand? You kind of want to do that to yourself, and in itself that is self-betrayal. In a sense, in a way it is, right? We have so much to learn. We do have so much to learn. But thank you so much, Folake Alli. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You're beautiful as well as wise. Yes.
Thank you.
I like to believe that I'm very selective with my friends, and when I select you, it's a compliment.
Oh my God, what an honor! Jesus,
it means, because I'm very, very intentional about these things, and again, that's one of the things that you build with maturity and with age, to know that iron sharpens iron. Right? I like friends that I can learn from, and I like friends that I can have this type of honest dialogues with, and I'm learning constantly. Don't want to be the smartest kid in the room. That for me is, I feel like for me those days are gone.
It's not an honor.
it's not. So looking for friends that they're not necessarily mirror you, but friends that can mirror where you want to be, right? And you can bounce off. I was talking to you earlier about your accountability partners. Very, very, very important.
I used to do that. I had a daily accountability partner, right? And it's so fun. It's such a simple thing, right? So there were like 3 or 4 of us, and we all had our tasks. So Demi, FK, blah, blah, blah. What are 5 things that you want to achieve today? And if you achieve it fully, like 100%, you put a green, like it was a color thing. If you put if you're kind of in the middle, yellow. And if you didn't do it at all, red. But if you forget to update the sheet, black. That black was so jarring that the thought of black coming on my sheet, I'm like, nah, bro, I better do this thing so that I can show, the rest of my partners how good I've been at, you know what I mean? It was really good, but I think we kind of got lost in the colors. And, it got to a point where I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore because...
Is it worthwhile going back?
Sorry, no, it is. But I feel like we need to properly set the intention. Because, it created healthy competition, but I feel like you all need to be on the same page. And just so that you can carry each other along. It's not about outshining the rest.
Oh,
it's not about having more greens than the... we kind of got to that point where it's like, why did you put a black on me? I hadn't... Well, it was...
Oh, I get that.
Do you know what I mean? Yes. So it'd be like, well, it was midnight in the UK and it was 11 p.m. in Nigeria. So why did you...
Yeah, so that's not really... That's probably a step too far.
Yeah, it got very competitive where we then lost sight of what we really set this up for. The reason why we did this was so that daily we could check in with each other and be like, wait, listen, this was on your list last week.
To hold each other accountable, but not to berate one another, right? No. Hold each other accountable and remind each other of where we're trying to get to, and to provide that support.
Yeah.
It's very, very important. it's one of those situations. If you have friends and you're not able to lean on them for that gentle reminder, but not even so much the gentle reminder, but the kindness that goes with that, right? To say, where were you? That hold you accountable, but not to berate you about it.
Yeah.
That's
But
not the goal.
we needed to reevaluate. I had to pull myself out of that situation, and like, okay, so what exactly are you trying to achieve with this? Because that was not the intention when we started it, but it became that because we became so competitive, So
we can hear everything. When you guys do that, the mic picks up everything. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so maybe it is worth going back to. But I feel like sometimes I need to be in a certain space mentally to be able to share and maybe that's not the right thing to do. Like, I feel like, I have to have my shit together to be able to share my goals with the next person.
But this is it though. The point is, you don't have to have it together. I think if you have a semblance of an idea of where what those goals are, and what I found was actually very helpful for me is that I could actually talk through those goals with somebody, and somebody can actually say to me, have you thought about it this way? Or perhaps maybe take it in this bites, and maybe next year we can achieve for that. Because if it's not necessarily to knock down your ambition, but to also remind you that, okay, you've got a lot within that list. How much can you take on? And to also ask you, to check in that, okay, because you don't want a friend that's going to allow you to set up goals that you it's just completely unachievable for you. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
Folake Alli, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks
As you know, we can talk all day long, but we don't have all day on the recording. So thank you so much for coming on SUSU Cool Down. Have you cooled down yet?
Yeah.
Is this been therapeutic for you?
It has. And
it's
I
always
can't
a bit
believe how long
therapeutic.
it's been. Like, it's been talking.
It goes very, very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But the camera is only here to be a little spy on the wall. There's nothing else. So thank you so much for watching, guys. It's an absolute pleasure sharing with you. I hope this episode has been useful for you, and I hope that you've learned something. Ultimately, I want you to grow as well as I'm growing. That's the reason why we do this. So yes, enjoy yourselves. Have a wonderful week. And as per usual, don't forget to be extraordinary in the way that only you can be. Take care, guys. Bye.